Recording. Okay, so we are doing Hilchos Yesodei Torah Perek Sheni. Okay, and we started that obviously last time, but he just defined Av as Hashem and Yir as Hashem, and now we're on Halacha Beis in the standard numberings. This is a new paragraph though. Ufiha Devarim Ha'elu Ani Mevayer Klalim Gedolim Mimaaseh Ribon Ha'olamim. Based on these things, in accordance with these things, these principles, I will explain great general principles in the work of the Lord of worlds. In order that there should be an opening or an introduction for the understanding person to love Hashem, or to love the name. Like the Chachamim said in regards to love. Yeah.
You said Lord of worlds, it's not Lord of eternities?
I think he is using rabbinic Hebrew. That's my intuition here. It could be Lord of Eternities. I'm not sure. Yeah. So we kind of talked about this before we started recording today, but a lot of stuff. Well, I guess maybe not in this first part, but there is going to be stuff in the next 3 chapters. 2, 3, and 4 that's going to be outdated because it's based on Aristotelian physics. And the question is going to be like, what? First of all, okay, what out of the Rambam's words are true and what is not, what is no longer true, or what do we now know is not true? Second question is going to be like, even stuff that is no longer true. The fact is that the Rishonim operated in an Aristotelian worldview. The whole world did for what, 2,000 years, more than 2,000 years. Aristotle was around 400, I think, BCE, and So even if if the stuff is not true, it's going to help us to understand the writings of the Rishonim who did rely on these categories. That's another benefit we're going to get out of this. And then the third benefit is, there's like a fantasy of what if you had a mind like the Rambam today, who wrote a Mishneh Torah like this today, what would he include in this chapter? And so that's just speculation, but we want to also see what is the Rambam trying to do here. And that way it opens up that category in our mind so that if we encounter a similar thing through learning science now or philosophy now, then we can, we can update it, so to speak, based on our own weak abilities. Okay. So he says like this: everything that God created in his world. Yes, here's another. This one clearly means worlds. I assume that the Rambam uses olam in rabbinic Hebrew.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense in the context.
Yeah, right. And he did state in the beginning of the Mishneh Torah that, or in the beginning of the Sefer Mitzvahs, that he's using rabbinic Hebrew or Lashon HaMishnah, right? Yeah. So we will err on that side. Everything God created in his world is divided into 3 divisions, 3 categories. So some of them are creations that are a composite of material and form. And they come into being and pass away continually. Like the bodies of man, animal, plant, and mineral. So that's category 1. Then there are creations that are a composite of material and form, but they do not change from body to body and from form to form like the first ones. I'll explain what that is in a second. But their form is now here's eternally, right? Is forever permanently in mattered, right? It's permanently established in their matter. And they don't change like these. These are the celestial spheres and the planets that are in them. And their form is not like, their material is not like other material, and their form is not like other forms. I'm going to actually read the, no, I'm not going to read the next part. Okay, right. So I'm going to kind of assume here that we are generally familiar with the concepts of form and matter, form and material. Okay, right. Yeah, form. So material is the easy thing to define, which is the stuff that things are made of. Form is more difficult to conceive of because form is not synonymous with shape. Form is that which is, I guess, the modern English words that best correspond to form are the structure of the thing, the defining qualities of the thing, or the defining quality of the thing, or the organizational principle of the thing. So that could be shape, but it could also not be. Like the examples that I like giving are, and I have a bunch of shiurim on this that I've been doing in my EO class. So like, if you want elaboration, we could go there. I'll put them in the show notes in the YouTube video. But the example that I like to use is the shoe, right? So you have Aristotle held that there were 4 causes, right? The material cause, the efficient cause, the formal cause, and the final cause. Material cause is what it's made of, in this case, leather. The formal cause is what it is made into. So shoeness is the form of the shoe. And that doesn't strike someone as having a meaning when they first hear it, but it's that which makes the shoe the shoe. So in the case of a shoe, it is somewhat tied to shape, but not exactly, because you have shoes that are like, like the American style shoe, which have a very specific shape. And then you have like a sandal, which is another type of shoe. And then a, whatever, like there's different types of things. It's not exactly the same shape. Then you have the efficient cause, which is what makes the material into the form. So in this case, the shoemaker or the shoemaking machine. And then you have the final cause, which is the purpose, which is to provide comfort for the feet while walking. Hey, how's it going? I made PDFs, so we can all use the same one. Yeah, we're on the second page. Yeah, so it's easy to see in man-made objects what the form is. In natural objects, it's different. It's much harder to see what it is, and especially now that we know about evolution. Like back then, you could at least say that like a dog is an actual form and is a really existing species. Now, not so clear what we would mean by that. So we'll go into this as needed, but that's the thing, yeah.
I was going to ask a kasha on this according to a Gemara. And
probably a bad idea.
I was like, I didn't understand the Gemara, and like I think I understand the Rambam, but like the Rambam definitely understood it better than I did.
yeah. We'll keep that out probably. So 2 important things to call your attention to here is number 1, this second category is we now know is like factually false. Is that when he says that the heavenly spheres and the planets that are in them are made out of a different material and a different form, and that the form is always in their material, that's just, there's nothing that corresponds to that I'm aware of nowadays. Like they thought that the heavens were made out of the 5th element, whereas everything on earth is made out of 4 elements. And that they thought that the heavens didn't change. We of course now know that they do change, and that they're of the same nature as the stuff on earth. And then when he said earlier, when he said that they don't change from body to body and from form to form, what he meant by that is really a reference to the first category, right? Is that all the stuff on earth is a form, is a certain material in a certain form, but they're constantly changing, right? So you have, in my EO class, we use the line from Mufasa in the Circle of Life, that the ants, not the ants, the antelope. Lions don't eat ants. The lions eat the antelope. And the material that used to be antelope material is then metabolized and becomes lion material. And that's actually what happens, is it's exactly the same stuff, but it's transformed into energy and into a different, into lion substance, into bones, fat, whatever, energy. But then the lion dies, and the material that once comprised the lion decomposes and becomes soil. So it's the same material, but now it's taken on a different form. And then the soil, the nutrients and stuff that once belonged to the lion, that all it feeds into the grass, which grows, which are then eaten by the antelope, and then the circle of life. And so it's a constant cycle of things changing, matter changing from one form to another. And the Rambam and Moreh, which we're not going to go into right now. And by the way, we do have to draw a line here. Okay, in these chapters, because it goes into maaseh, merkavah, and maaseh bereshis, I do want to stay away from the Moreh because that would just be an endless pursuit. So I'm going to try to stick to the Mishneh Torah here, for these purposes. But in the Moreh, he says that in explaining Shlomo Melech's use of the mashal of the woman in Mishlei, that matter is likened to a promiscuous wife. promiscuous in the sense that she's always sleeping around, but wife in the sense that she is married. So she's always with one man, but she's looking for another. So same thing with matter, is that matter is always in one form. That's how the Rambam started, is you don't see, or that's what he's going to say. Did he say this earlier? Hold on. I thought he says you never see, I think he's going to say in chapter, yeah, you never see matter without form or form without matter, right? So that's true. You never see it, you never encounter it, but all matter is, so to speak, trying to escape its forms to take on another form, and that's what leads to the process of coming to be, passing away.
You're actually about to talk about form without matter.
What was that?
I think he's about to talk about form without matter.
Right.
But I think it seems like he's building up, like, I don't know if tiers of existence is the right term, but he's talking about like form plus matter that changes, then form plus matter that doesn't change, then just form. Yeah,
exactly. And those are exhaustive categories according to him. Yeah. And the Sefer Chinuch takes that even further and says that like uses that to explain how like God was trying to create all possible things, in the world. And that's why he has these three categories. All right. Gimel. Umehen brewing Surah below Golem Klal. There are forms without any matter at all, without any material at all. By the way, I always I accidentally switch back and forth between matter and material. I think it is a useful distinction to say, which is that material is just a relative term. Something could be material in reference to something else, and form in reference to something else. So, for example, the wood here is material in relation to the table. But the table could be material in relation to the furnishings of the base midrash, and the base furnishings of the base midrash could be material in relation to the yeshiva, And then same thing with the wood, that we call the wood material in relation to the table, but the wood is also form in relation to the stuff that makes up the wood, And matter is referring to like the bottom layer, so to speak, but I use them interchangeably. I think I'm using the word material here because the Rambam doesn't use the normal word for material, which is chomer. He says golem. And I think golem fits better with material. If you're going to make that distinction, golem fits better with material and chomer fits better with matter. So these forms without material, hein ha-malachim, those are the angels. Shemalachim einan guf ugvia. Malachim are not a body or a corporeal entity. Elatsuros nifrados zomizo. They are forms that are separate from one another. Now, what is the nature of these forms? What are malachim? That's a whole thing, right? So that we talked about when we did the angels in the tefillah going to the bathroom. I'll try to put the link for that. And then in my EO class, I've talked about it a lot. I will recommend, though, I'm rereading this now. This is the one book on angelology that I own, The Angels and Us by Mortimer Adler, of course, who writes on everything. And in it, he starts off, there are two sections here that are of note. Well, he has the prologue, but then he has section 2 is angels as objects of religious belief, where he mostly talks about biblical angels as understood by like Thomas Aquinas. But then part 3 is angels as object of philosophical thought. And that's really what I'm rereading now, where he talks about like the Aristotelian conception of angels, which we might need to make reference to this book here just for handy explanations. But if you're in, and then part 4 I've never read, it's called Angelic Fallacies in Modern Thought. That's just extremely intriguing to me. I don't know what an angelic fallacy is. So if you're interested in an angel book, that's the only one I know of that I can recommend. Okay. So if, given the fact that we just said the angels are not physical, what is it that the Nevi'im said when they saw a malach as a fire and possessing wings? Right? They're not physical. How can they see them? So answer, hakol b'mar hanavua v'derech chida. All of it is in a prophetic vision and as a riddle, right? Now, this is interesting. Now I wish I had the full text of the Rambam. Let me just look on it. What did he use when he was talking about God and Dibur Torah Kolam Shem B'nei Adam?
Mashal, not kol mashal.
But not chida?
Not chida.
Okay, I'm just going to double check that. I think you're right, though. But yeah, hold on. Mashal, hakol mashal, and no chida. Yeah. Okay. Good. So what is the difference? I don't know. Chida is a riddle, right, or epigram.
More secretive.
More secretive. Is that true?
Because I think like a riddle is something you have to like puzzle out, as
Uh-huh.
opposed to a mushal is supposed to be understandable.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense. Right. Yeah. Okay. And if you look again, we're trying to stay away from the Moreh Nevuchim, but the way that the Rambam explains the imagery of angels in the Moreh Nevuchim, he does treat it like a mashal. Sorry, like a chida. Like for example, like he says, the angels that Yeshayahu saw, that they had 6 wings, and that 2 of them they would cover their faces, 2 of them they would cover their legs, and then 2 of them they would fly with. So he says that that, and I guess this we do have to say here that the Rambam there says that angels are and laws of forces of nature are synonymous. So he's explaining it in that regard, and he says, what does it mean that it covers its face? It means that the causes of natural phenomena are very, very hard to grasp. So it's hidden. And then the covering its feet, he says, means that the effects are very hard to discern. And if you think about laws of nature, I mean, that is the state that we're in now as advanced as sciences, is like deciphering the causes is still something exceedingly hidden. And like, we don't really know the full effects of all the laws of nature and seeing all the ramifications. And then flying, he says, is a mashal for efficiency of movement, that they are the most efficient and streamlined possible, and he says that that's because
there's nothing more efficient than flying.
Well, he says 2 things,
teleport. That seems
but that's not real though. He's saying
is flying real though?
Yeah, birds. I mean, heard birds.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but what do you call it? That is how he explains it. He says that there are different modes by which bodies move, and the one that is the most efficient and the one that people fantasize about is flying. That is just like pure efficiency. I guess fish that swim really fast doesn't quite capture the same feeling. Yeah. Also, there's like an idea. I know. What was it?
Like whooshing by.
Yeah, I feel like also even like in terms of emotionally, the idea of a fish going through water feels like it's moving through a medium, whereas even though the bird is doing that, it feels like the bird is just unbounded. Yeah. So this is what I meant when I said that he does, at least in that explanation, that's like I think what he means by a chida, like a riddle. It's not like, for example, when you talk about God took us out of Mitzrayim with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. That's not a riddle. That's a mashal, where like arm is power and like end of story. Like this is like each element has to be decoded into an idea. That it's teaching you. Okay. So right, lomar she'eno guf, meaning to say that they're not a body. Eno kavid kagufas akavidim, they're not heavy like heavy bodies. Kamoshen emar ki Hashem elokecha eish ochlahu, ve'eno eish ala mashal. So there he's saying it's a mashal, not a chida. Ukamoshen emar osei malach of ruchos misharsav eish lo hate. Like it says, he makes the wind his messengers, or his malachim, fire, the flame of fire his servant. Yeah. Okay. Fine. So that's that's Nevi'im. Okay. The appearance in Nevi'im. Okay. Uvamei pardu hatsurus zomizo, v'harei inam gufun. So, how are these forms separate from one another when they are not bodies? Lefi she'enan shavim b'mitziasan. Oh, sorry. Before we do this, so I just as a sample of how helpful this can be. Last night I was reading this exact question. Okay. And he just articulates it really well. All right. He says, and I know we talked about this with regards to Hashem and saying that why there can only be one God, because if there were more, then they have to be differentiated. So he says, this is just, I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs just to give a sampling here. So he says, we have assumed that the possibility of angelic being includes the possibility of a plurality of angels. We are thereby compelled to ask how, in a multitude of possible angels, one angel differs from the other. In an attempt to answer this question, it will be helpful to consider the ways in which corporeal substances differ from one another. We can then inquire whether incorporeal substances differ in the same way. Okay, 2 physical objects can differ in the species to which they belong. If both are members of the same species, they can differ as individuals. Specifically alike, they can differ individually in a number of ways. For example, in the physical realm, atoms that have the same weight and interior structure and are specifically alike, atoms of different weights and interior structure are specifically different. 2 atoms that are specifically alike are nevertheless 2 different individuals, 2 different members of the same species. Now, the question I'll pose to you before we read his answers, how would 2 atoms that are exactly the same differ? Space. It says their individual difference or two-ness consists in the fact that each occupies a different place or is in a different position in space. Okay, next, in the domain of living organisms, individual differences are more complex. Two plants or animals that are specifically alike differ as individuals in the following ways. First of all, they differ individually in the same way as two atoms that are specifically alike, namely by the unique place or position that each occupies in space. In addition, they differ by one's having certain accidental traits not possessed in the other. For example, one rose of a certain species can be pink, another of the same species red. One man can have the skin of light complexion, and another the skin of dark complexion. In both examples, the color of the individual is an accidental quality in the sense that it in no way prevents the individuals who thus differ from belonging to the same species. There's still a third way in which living organisms that belong to the same species differ as individual members of it. With regard to certain attributes, which are not accidental traits as above, but rather are specific properties, i.e. attributes belonging to every member of the species, one individual may possess a given specific property to a greater or lesser degree than another. If all roses of a certain species have thorns, one individual member of that species may have more thorns or larger thorns than another. All members of the human race have the property of being able to reason. Some individuals are better at it than others, whether through natural endowment or through acquired skill. So then he goes on and elaborates on this and then poses the question that, this is after all these examples here, that, hold on, we are now prepared to ask whether A, the differences between angels are always specific and never individual differences, or B, both specific and different and individual differences, and C, if specific, in which sense of the term specific, the metaphysical or biological sense, which you went through earlier. You got to read the whole chapter for this in particular, but the reason why I'm bringing it up is to show the difference between what the Rambam says when he says klalim gedolim and like an actual study of angelology. You know, like he's going to say the like Cliff Notes answer here, Spark Notes answer. But there's a lot more to be thought about. And these are the questions that like a person will keep coming back to in the Mishneh Torah and eventually in the Moreh Nevuchim when confronted with problems. For example, we name angels, right? Michael, Gabriel, you know, Metatron, right? And like, so the problem is going to be, that sounds like individual angels could be different, but then we're going to have a hard time reconciling that from what the Rambam says when he presents angels as not like that, you know? So like there's a lot more here than what the Rambam says, and like, you know, needs to be thought about. Okay, so what's his answer? Yeah.
I'm just noticing about footnotes.
Yeah.
He sometimes defines like a single word by another single word. And in fact, both times that I noticed that, you mentioned that the Rambam specifically uses the word that he does and not the word that... Like
chida and mashal, is that what you're looking at here?
Yeah, chida and mashal, and by golem, he said golem and not chomer. Also footnote this is golem is chomer. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, my guess is that that is just to translate the word, you know, an unfamiliar term.
To make the word more accessible.
Yeah, yeah. Like I don't think he's saying that it's literally the same thing. Okay, so how do angels differ from one another? So he says, Ella kol echad mehen lamata mima alaso shel chavero. So each one is beneath the level of its fellow. V'hu matsui mikocho, and it exists by its potential or power. Zeh l'malim mizeh, each one above the other. V'hakol nimtzai mikocho shel hakadosh baruch hu v'tuvo, and all of them exist from the power of hakadosh baruch hu and his goodness. V'zehu sheramas shlomo b'chachmaso v'amar ki gavoah me'al gavoah shomer u'gvoim alehem. That one of them, there's one guardian higher than the other, and there are u'gvoim alehem. There, I don't know if that means there are those who are higher than them, or there is one who is higher than them. Yeah, so that doesn't really answer so much, right? Because what does it mean that it's above, right? I mean,
is it like let's say there's one that's like the malach of fire is dependent on the malach of like chemical reactions or something like that.
So that's what I'm not sure about, but he does explain. So let's read the next one because he does explain here. V'zeh shamarna lamata mima'alaso, right, which is a physical description, and that's a problem because he said these are not physical. Ina ma'alas makam, so that's not a physical place. Kamosh adam shiyoshav l'mal mechaver, like a person sitting above his friend. Ella kamosh omrim b'shnei chachamim she'echad gadol mechaver b'chachma shehu lamala mima'alaso shelazeh. Okay, so he gives two examples of this, and then that's it, and he leaves us on our own. Namely, that like one chacham who's superior to the other, we say he's on a higher level than his fellow, and like the cause is on a higher level than the effect.
So like one precedes the other?
Yes and no. Because
Well, the
if
first
you meant,
example is not that.
right, the first example is not that with the Chachamim.
Right.
And then with the I think you're not going to be able to say that by the by cause and effect, because even though causes do precede their effects, that can't be what he means here, because
Not physical.
that's not physical, right? This is not physical.
So
Yeah.
then what cause and effect is he talking about if it's not physical?
No. In other words, cause and effects are physical, but when he says it's higher than, it doesn't just mean the fact that it came before. It means that it's dependent on and exists because of. You know, so not existentially. I mean, you could call it existentially, but I don't mean like existential philosophy. Like in existence, you know, it precedes the other. Like I gave this example earlier when we were talking about Matzah Rishon, that like, you know, appetizers come before dinner, but dinner is on a higher level than appetizers because the notion of an appetizer is dependent on the notion of dinner. You're being appetized for the main course, you know, even though it comes prior in time.
Right. I
Yeah.
understand. It's not that one thing was caused by the other thing, but it's just that one thing depends on the other thing.
Yeah, and in that sense, it's caused. It's not caused by an efficient cause. It doesn't.
Right.
We're not referring to the fact
It's
that it
just
makes it.
existence.
Yeah, it's dependent on its existence. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so that is how the angels are higher than one another.
Quick
Yes.
question.
Yeah.
What kind of cause would you call that? If it's not an efficient cause, which one of the causes is it?
I don't know. The only reason I rule out efficient cause is because of the temporality thing, you know? I don't know. It's not material cause, can tell you that much. And it's also probably not final cause, so it's formal cause. Must be. Yeah, but I don't know what that means, though. That's the problem, you know? I don't know what that means.
What was the cause of your knowledge of that?
I didn't know. Okay. Yeah. All right, let's see. Yeah. I don't know the answer. Maybe I actually have not read his answer yet. I stopped there last night. I was like, oh, I got to think about this. Let me just see if he says something really quickly about that. He does. Okay. So he's, let's see what he says. For kicks here, right? He says, okay, we can say at once that two angels cannot differ individually as two atoms or as any other two bodies differ by the difference between the unique places or positions each occupies in space. Except when in performing their earthly missions, angels act on terrestrial bodies, they do not occupy space. In heaven, two angels may be in different positions relative to one another, but these positions must be understood as spiritually different, not as different places. Okay, let's see here. Hold on, this is gonna be, I'm gonna have to read this and sort it out and see if it's relevant. Okay, fine. Oh my, okay, he gets into math, all right. As an analogy, all right, fine. Okay, Shinoi Shemos HaMalachim, the different names of the angels, Al Shem Ma'alosamhu, is based on the name of their level. The names are based on their levels. L'fikach, therefore, Nikraim, they are called. Chayos HaKodesh, the holy living beings, I guess is how you would translate them literally. V'hem L'mala Min HaKol, and they're above everyone, so that's the highest level. Then Ofanim, yeah.
I'm noticing you translated them as holy.
Transcendent.
Yeah. Or yeah.
Yeah. Ofanim, the wheelie gigs, right? I don't know how to translate it, but I mean, I don't know what the literal translation of Ofan is. I know in modern Hebrew it's wheels.
What's the one with the faces that go in different directions? Is that Srafim?
Several of them are mentioned in Yechezkel's vision. Srafim are the fiery ones. Ofanim are mentioned there also, but there's several ones mentioned. So yeah. Elim, no clue how to translate that literally. Chashmalim, the electric ones, right? No, that's just a modern Hebrew term also, right? Srafim, the fiery ones. Malachim, and this is the difficult thing also, by the way. Malachim is both a specific species of malach or type of malach, and then also the generic term. So malachim is one of the levels, which is here. Veluchim, okay, Elohim here, not as a proper noun of God, but as a the angel term. Bnei Elohim, children of Elohim. Kruvim, cherubs, and Ishim, literally men, right? But now this is important, okay? I've not seen anyone argue with this, but the footnote supports this. Footnote Zion 1 on the top right. Ishim nikraim gam hasechel hapoal. Okay, the Ishim are the active intellect. Okay, so whenever you see active intellect mentioned, that is this this thing. And he says, "V'hu," and the Rambam is going to explain this in a little while, but still in the footnote, "V'hu saro shel olam." This is the chief officer of the world. Shemaz kirim chachamim tamid, that the chachamim mentioned constantly. The al yado Hashem nosein tzurus liyeshuos, without an I. What are you using? Yeshuos. Liyeshuyos ba'olameno. Yeah. So in the I'm just going to read the Rambam philosophy. Hold on. The Rambam glossary people who make this Rambam, who know Aristotelian and Rambam stuff, they have the cleanest definition of the active intellect that I've seen. I mean, of course, it's clean because it's not material, but I meant the definition. He says, "Seichel hapoal ha'achron b'sharsheres haschalim hanivdalim." It's the last one in the chain of separate intellects. That's what the Rambam just described, the Ishim, and does two things, which are really one thing, but two forms. Nosein hatsuros b'chomarim. It endows matter with form. Umotzi seichel ha'adam min hakoach el poal, and it brings man's intellect from the state of potentiality to actuality. So it is both responsible for the forms in the world and is what enables man to actually know instead of just potentially knowing something. Again, our old question here, to what extent is this at all relevant to anything? Is this an outdated Aristotelian concept that has absolutely no place? Is it still a useful mashal? Is there a real world corollary to the active intellect in a modern understanding of epistemology and neurology? Who knows? That's part of why we need to go through this to be aware and to be able to formulate our own opinions on this. But the interesting thing is the Rambam doesn't use the term seichel poal here, and he's sticking to, I mean, I can't answer this question, just observation here. Rambam is going through Aristotelian stuff. Sometimes he uses Aristotelian language, like forms and matters. Torah doesn't use those terms. But then other times he avoids using Aristotelian terms, like these angels are only the names that the Torah gives them. It's not even the names that Chachamim give them, So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess he is trying to explain, he's trying to explain what reality is, I think.
Yeah.
And insofar as it's talked about in the Torah, he's gonna use the Torah, like what the Torah says.
Right.
And then to the extent that it's based on like discovery, he's gonna talk about the discovery.
Yeah. I mean that makes sense as a policy. Another thing here also, just because I mentioned the names of angels before. So according to this, where is Michael and Gabriel? Where are they?
Individual malachim.
But there's no such thing as individual malachim. There's only these 10.
Wait, what 10?
These 10 that he just listed.
10 groups.
Well, that's the thing though. How would you differentiate within one of the groups? See, because that's what this was part of the Rambam's answer to his question is, how do you differentiate between two different angels? Only based on their level, and there are 10 levels, which means there are only 10 angels.
Well, I'm confused. It's not you can distinguish between things that are not based on their location, right? There are other ways to distinguish between things.
How?
How
that's not corporeal.
Right. Well, I don't know. Let's say like green and red are two different colors, but they don't they don't have like two different locations or whatever.
True. True.
They do.
Right. That happens to be a tricky category in the sense that those are accidents themselves, meaning I'm not saying that makes it not a question, but like here he's talking about differentiating existences,
right?
Like the difference, for example, between the number 1 and the number 2, that's also a real difference that's not dependent on corporeal things, but that's an accidental quality. Like the quantity is a category of thought, And angels, I think we're saying here, angels are real existences. They're not just a category of thought. And this is another problem, by the way, when we say like, what do we mean when we say that the forms exist? Like, does that mean like they, for lack of a better term, and this is not really what he clearly not what he means. Do you mean if like you go out there, you can like find them, And this like gets into another machlokas about like what the difference was between the way that that Plato conceived of forms and that Aristotle conceived of forms, about like whether forms are in matter or whether forms can exist like in the world of forms or whatever it is. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but just I'm aware that there's such a machlokes. So, but just working with the premises here, just tell me what I'm missing here. He says, he starts off with a question, B'mei pardu hatsuros zo mizo, v'hare einan gufin. So how can you distinguish between them when they're not bodies? Because they're not equal in their existence. Okay, fine. So they're one above the other. Then in the next halacha, one is higher than the other, and like the cause and the effect. And then the names of the malachim are based on their levels. So clearly, let's say Chayos HaKodesh are above Ofanim. But now let's say if you wanted to say that there are multiple Chayos HaKodesh.
Man, what determines like what level? Well,
that's another good question, because the fact that we're calling them different levels seems to mean that those are qualitative differences.
It would seem.
But I don't know about that though, because see, here's the problem, right? It sounds like he's just saying that they're whatever is above the other one is considered a different malach, right? That's how he said, right?
For a thing to be above a different thing is for there to be something for it to be above about. Meaning there has to be equality.
Right. Well, so and he did name that it exists from its power, right? Causally, it's above. But here's what I was going to go with this is that just a second is that that I just want to finish this slide before I lose it, is that if you said that there were only 10 malachim, then this scheme at least works, because then you could say that Chayos Kodesh are different than Ofanim. But if you're going to tell me that there are multiple Chayos HaKodesh and multiple Ofanim, so then the question is, well, what would distinguish them from each other? And if you're going to say, well, they're on different levels, so then you get into your question of what then makes you draw the line and say, you're a Chayos HaKodesh.
And how do we determine what's what?
Yeah. What are you saying, Isaac? Oh, Isaac?
I don't think he's saying that it's causal, because he said it's one of the examples he used was like how a cause is above the effect. But the other example was one chacham is above another chacham, which is not a causal thing.
Right, but he's going to say that both of them apply to angels, though. He hasn't said that about the angels yet, is that their knowledge is higher than the other ones. That's where it gets confusing. Meaning, when you first read this Rambam in Vav, it sounds like he's just giving examples, but the more you read it, the more it sounds like he's actually saying how one malach is higher than the other, that it's causally higher and it has a greater knowledge, and that the existence of the lower one comes from the knowing of the higher one. We'll see that in a few halachos, but I mean, we can revisit this, but we'll see it in a few halachos. Yeah, Zev, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, it's funny that I think all the terms for the malachim are in plural, even though there's only one.
Yeah. That's the confusing thing. And that's the thing also, is like, even the Rambam is, I think if you ask the Rambam, if you like pulled him aside after Shir and said, hey Rambam, how many seichel polos are there? He'll say one. There's only one active intellect. Yeah, he calls them ishim, Yeah. All right, so I just want to read a few more and just to complete the picture. Kol elu asara, we're on Zion 2. Kol elu asara Hashem shenikru behen ha-malachim. All these 10 names that the malachim are called, al shem eser malos shalahen heim. They're named after their 10 levels. It's pretty clear there's 10 levels, right? Umalash ein lamala mimena ela malas hakel barahu. He malas hatsurus shnikras chayos. No longer kodesh. Right? So the level that there's no level higher than other than God is called chayos. Lefikach, therefore, nemar b'nevuah shein tachas hakisei. Whoa, what? Now there's suddenly a kisei? Therefore, it says in nevuah that they're under the throne. Umala asiris he, and the 10th level, he malas hatsura shnikras ishim. That is the tsura, the level of the tsura that is called ishim. That's also weird, singular and plural, right? It's the form that we call ishim. V'him hamalachim shemadabrim im hanavim v'nirin lahem b'mar hanavua. And they are the malachim that speak with prophets and appear to them in a prophetic vision. Now, this is also interesting. Sorry, and then
plural.
And all plural again, right? Lefikach nikru ishim shemalasan krova mimalas das adam. and that's why they're called men, because their level is close above the mind of man. Now, again, this is also confusing because if the Ishim is equal to the Seichel HaPoal, which we wouldn't know if it weren't for the Mishnah, the Moreh Nevuchim here, then it does more than just talking to the Nevi'im. It's responsible for all knowledge in all forms. So, but the Rambam here in the Mishneh Torah is only focusing on the fact that this is the one that communicates to the Nevi'im. You know,
Right.
yeah. Side question also, but a side quest, and I might have shared this before. I don't think this year. I think maybe we talked about it on Shabbos once. Is and we haven't gotten to this yet, but when the Rambam says about Moshe Rabbeinu that he did not communicate with God through an intermediary, so did that just mean that he does not communicate through Ishim, or does it mean that he doesn't communicate through any intermediary? In other words, is it just that Moshe doesn't speak through, is it just that all the other Nevi'im speak through an angel and Moshe doesn't speak through that angel, or Moshe doesn't speak through any angel? And the answer that was theorized, I forgot if this was Rindy or Rabbi Trachman, but that it's just that he bypasses the 10th level. And the raya was that what object represents Nevuos Moshe is the Luchos, and what's above the Luchos that represents Mosaic prophecy is Kruvim. And what level is Kruvim? Number 9. So in other words, all the other Nevi'im have to speak through the Ishim, but Moshe Rabbeinu's Nevuah comes through the Kruvim. Mm-hmm. Moshe was like on the 10th level. And the Rambam and Avram and Rambam have a whole thing about this also with like, if I was a Navi, then my Nevuah would come through Hashem, from Hashem via the 10th level of Malach, through that Malach. But then there's some Moreh Nevuchim and Avram and Rambam where they talk about how when Aaron talking to Moshe was like another Navi talking to God through a Malach.
So like
Moshe was the Malach to Aaron, yeah, something like that. So there's a lot of, I'm just pointing out that there's like a lot of stuff that goes on here about the mechanisms of Nevuah, which I guess we'll get into a little bit when we get into the chapter on Nevuah, but like it's very complicated and I don't know. And this is the difficulty with like learning any of the Rambam stuff on Nevuah, which is that it's all wrapped up in these Aristotelian categories, and like, how do you know what's true and what's false and what is outdated and what can be updated? Yeah.
It does sound like there are multiple Malachim at least in Ishim. Like, I don't know what differentiates one from another.
Yeah, that's the problem, right?
Unless it's like the particular manifestations of it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm inclined to say.
Yeah.
Like it could be that, like when you say that when two Nevi'im are getting Nevuah, they're each getting it's like a singular of Ishim.
Yeah,
something like that.
something yeah, it's
Like,
yeah, it does seem like that, but yeah, Zeph?
Why are there 2 Kruvim? There should only be 1 Kruvim.
The Rambam has a whole thing on that about what would happen if there was one.
Oh,
the Kruvim is that you would think people would mistake it for God. What was that?
I think we have like an anniversary about the Kruvim.
Yeah. There's a good cheer on that, and then the Rambam says that the 2 Kruvim, one is the active intellect, and then the other one is the human intellect, material intellect, and they represent that. So I don't know why he calls them Kruvim. I don't know if he holds by these 10 levels. I don't know. This is far outside my field. Okay. By the way, this chapter has the feel of like, we're supposed to walk through and say, I don't understand that or that or that. It's just like a tour through the unknown to us. Yeah.
Yeah, and it remains unknown.
Yeah. Okay. Ches. B'chol hatzurus ha'elu, chaim u'makirim es haboreh. All of these forms are alive and recognize the Creator. V'yod inoso dea gedola ad la'ma'od, and they know Him with a great, exceedingly great knowledge. Kol tzura v'tzura lefi ma'alasa, each form according to its level. Lo kafi godlo, not according to His greatness. I think means, the footnote says lo lefi godlo shel kadosh baruch hu shehu ein sofi. These modern Hebrew words, which is infinite. Okay, fine. Afilu mala harishona ina yichola lahasik amitas abore kamashihi. Even the highest level, the Chayos HaKodesh, doesn't apprehend the reality of the Creator like it is. Ella da'ata katsar lahasik, but its mind is deficient to grasp. Yeah. See here, he keeps on switching between singular and plural, right? I mean, you could say he's talking about the class, but he says da'ata katsar lahasik, its mind. The mind of the highest level. Right. It's just, I don't know, it's weird. All right, aval masegas v'yodas yaser mimash masegas v'yodas tzur shalamata mimena. But it knows, meaning the highest level knows, apprehends and knows more than what is apprehended and known to the form beneath it. V'chein kol malav umalat. Same thing with each and every level. Ad malah hasiris, until the 10th level. Umalah hasiris gam hi yodas abore dea she'en koach b'nei adam hamechubar migol mitzura yachol hasi v'leda kamosa. It too knows the Creator with a knowledge that humans who are comprised of material and form lack the capacity to know, to grasp and to know like it, meaning it's beyond human knowledge to grasp. But none of them know the Creator like he knows himself. Okay, and this is now where he says, okay, we'll see. All existences other than the Creator, Mitsura Harishona ad Yatush Katan Batabur Haaretz, all the existences aside from the Creator, from the first form, which I think is the Chayos HaKodesh, until the Yatush, I think is like a worm or a maggot or a bug or something like that in the belly of the earth. Hakol mikoach amito nimsa'u. All of them exist by the power of his reality. And because he knows himself and he recognizes his own greatness and his splendor and his truth, he knows everything. Nothing is hidden from him. So that's getting to another big issue that is very deep, which is God's knowledge. So how does God know other stuff? Because he knows himself. Yeah. And again, this is, I don't know very much of this, but like one of the reasons why you have to say something like that is because you can't say that God knows stuff based on observation, because first of all, he doesn't need a process to know it. Secondly, the material world is constantly changing. So we have to, whenever you're talking about God's knowledge, you have to explain what it means or how he can know stuff that is not acquired through a process and is not through changing particulars. So I'm not saying that this, that I know what the Rambam means, but this solves that problem, is that God knows himself, who is unchanging and has no multiplicity whatsoever. And then through that, he knows everything, since everything exists from him. How that works, what it means,
knowledge.
Yeah. What it means for God to know stuff, I really don't know. And the problem with this is if you look in Tanakh, God's knowledge is really a mashal for hashgacha pratis. But that doesn't make sense to talk about him knowing himself. So knowing, what was it?
What do you mean?
Like it says God knew Avraham, means that he was mashgiach on him. But saying God knows himself means he's mashgiach on himself. That just doesn't make any sense. So it has to be another metaphor of knowledge than what we're used to. So I don't even know what that is. Right. And then he goes on to talk about more. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makir amitov yodea osa kamoshihi. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows him, recognizes himself and knows what he is, knows himself as he is. He doesn't know with the knowledge external to him, like we know, because we in our minds are not one. He and his mind and his existence, his life, are one, from every aspect and every foundation, every corner. If God lived with a life, and knew with a knowledge, then there would be many gods. He, his life and his mind. But that's not true. He is one in every aspect, every manner, every way of oneness.
The only one.
More than just the only one, but he is one.
Right.
Yeah. There's no multiplicity. Nimseis Omer. So it turns out, and now here he drops another big philosophical principle, which is beyond my ability to understand. The Rambam deals with it in the Moreh Nevuchim. Nimseis Omer hu hayodea, v'hu hayadua, v'hu hadea atzma. Turns out he is the knower. He is that which is known. meaning because he knows himself, and then from that knows everything. And he is the knowledge itself because he doesn't know with the knowledge that is outside, with the mind that's outside of him. Hakol echad, all of them are the same. This matter, the mouth doesn't have the ability to speak it, nor does the ear have the ability to hear it. That's a Koheles reference. And the mind of man doesn't have the ability to recognize it clearly. And that's why we say Chei Pharaoh, by the life of Paro, V'chei nafshacha, and by the life of your soul. We don't say as the life of Hashem, because that would imply that there's God in his life. Ela Chai Hashem, the living God, or as God lives. So we were avoiding She'ein haboreh v'chayav shnayim, because God and his life are not two. Kamo chaye hagufos hachayim u'kachai hamalachim. Unlike the lives of living bodies or the lives of the malachim, which, by the way, runs into another problem, which is that we were talking about this earlier about angels being non-physical, and in what sense are they or not like created beings. So apparently angels at least are two. There's the angel and its life, but with God we don't say that. So what does that mean, the angel and its life, and could that be a basis for differentiating between different angels, that they have different lives?
Well, it would seem that you could, exactly, because if there's, that's what I was going to say also, like, what is the issue with let's say differentiating the angels by like a certain like set of conditions or something, that like this one falls into this level, this one falls into that
Because
level.
the
Like,
problem,
we obviously don't know what that is,
right?
But, like, what would be the issue if we could go that?
If you could do that, that'd be fine. The problem is, are you going to be able to find criteria like that are not corporeal, that are not physical?
Right, it'd be very challenging.
yeah. I'm gonna have to scrape the bottom of the barrel for those. Yeah.
I know you mentioned not to bring up the Moreh, but I can't.
I know I keep on bringing it up, so it's okay.
Well, I'm wondering with my father, and we get reach this particular area. The Rambam does mention, and when he's like within the bunch of like the Aristotelian rules, in the beginning of the second highlight, he said that a non-corporeal object cannot be subject to multiplicity unless it's like in a corporeal object.
So then,
connected to a corporeal object. We don't really know what that means. You also hold that like in the Shema, that like they're not more than one neshama unless they're attached to a physical body.
yeah, that's the difficulty, and like I'm very especially curious with the thing you referenced. What that says about the line that I was just asking about is kechaye hamalachim. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, because that sounds like multiplicity. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Seems like you have to make info.
Right. Yep. It's yep. Another add the question to the table. Yeah. Zev, were you say something?
Also by life, what do we exactly mean by life? Is that like existence, or is that something else?
Here it sounds like it's talking about existence, because it can't be talking about biological life, because he's using it about God and about the malachim. I mean, it turns out we have biological life, which is human beings and animals. Then you have living God, which is not even life. It is just God's existence, and he and himself are similar. And then you have the existence of the malachim. And the question is, what is that? And that's what we mentioned earlier when we said that malachim were brought into existence, and in that sense, they're not eternal. But do they exist in time? Like, how can you be brought into existence and not exist in time? Yeah. One more paragraph, and then just that'll be the end of this section, and we can leave it. But lefikach eno makir habruim v'yoda'am mechmas habruim. Therefore, God does not recognize and know the creations based on the creations. Kamos she'anu yodim osam, like we know them, meaning not based on observation. Ela machmas atzmo yeda'im, but he knows them because of himself. Lefikach, therefore, mipnei shu yodei atzmo yodei hakol. Therefore, since he knows himself, he knows everything. Shalkol nismach b'haviyaso lo. That throws a wrench into the whole thing, because everything relies in its existence on him. So that is, I don't know. Somehow that's connecting knowledge. These angels know God, and therefore they exist. Their existence and their knowledge is related, and that stands to reason, given the fact that they are only separate intellects and their existence is their knowledge.
But what is acquiring knowledge to exist?
Whoop. I don't know. Yeah. So I think what the plan will be for, I mean, look, I'm still gonna skim through and find whatever's relevant in this book, but this is heavy stuff. And as the Rambam is gonna start off tomorrow, he's gonna, the last couple of halachos in here are talking about this as maaseh merkavah. And one of the detours that I do want to take is the Rambam in Chagiga in the Parish of Mishnah, where he explains what maaseh merkavah and maaseh breshis are. And the restrictions on learning them, because he alludes to them shorthand here, but there he really spells out like what the nature of these subjects is and why they're so difficult. And I think since we just encountered that difficulty firsthand, it'd be a good idea to read about it. Okay, so tomorrow we'll plan to do these last 3 halachos and then go through that part in Chagiga and then go on from there, wherever it takes us. Okay, see ya.
Thanks.
Yeah.